Dr. Zixtel's forearms trembled as he adjusted the seal on his environmental suit for the 20th time. The hiss of microseals locking in place was too loud in his ears, competing with the distant crackle of magnetic interference that danced like ghosts across the upper atmosphere of Zarian Prime. He swallowed hard, the taste of his recycled air metallic and sterile. This wasn't a simulation. This wasn't the safety of an orbital lab. This was real. He activated his communication array with a jitter of uncertain fingers. Atmospheric readings remain volatile, he reported, his voice clipped, professional, betraying none of the growing weight in his chest. Gravity is 1.3 times standard. Oxygen levels fluctuate between safe and hypoxic. Ionized particulates are peaking at red level intensity, and electromagnetic storms are active within a 10-kilometer radius. The words were data, clean, cold, safe. But his eyes kept drifting to the ravine below, where the land cracked like fractured bone, steam rising from vents that pulsed with bioluminescent fungus. Nothing here felt safe. Commander Vex 9, looming a full 2 meters tall in his armored combat frame, stepped forward and activated the power cells on his plasma rifle with a hum that vibrated in Zixtel's chest cavity. The faint blue glow reflected off the commander's dark visor as he swept his weapon across the terrain. "Recommend high alert status," he said flatly. "Class 9 Deathworld designation confirmed. Maintain caution protocols." The rest of the survey team, a mix of Keeltherian xenobotanists and Zilla geologists, murmured acknowledgments, their tones tight. Every movement was measured. Every sound made the wrong kind of echo. Then she arrived. Dr. Hume Chen dropped from the shuttle's side ramp with a soft crunch of boots against red sand. No armored suit, no sealed helmet, just a breathable filtration mask over her mouth, a utility vest slung over a light weatherproof jacket, and a datapad in one hand. She looked around casually, as if stepping into a mild breeze. Zixtel stared. "Dr. Chen, the atmosphere, little dry," she interrupted, adjusting her mask. "Slightly. Definitely dusty. But manageable. Humidity's low, too. Reminds me of Colorado. The entire team froze. Colorado?" She crouched near a rock ledge, ignoring the way the wind hissed like something alive. With practiced ease, she chipped off a fragment of mineral growth and dropped it into a scanner vial. "You know," she added, brushing her hair back behind her ear, "if it weren't for the gravity, I'd say this place feels like late autumn in Montana." One of the botanists clicked nervously in Keeltherian. Zixtel didn't translate. His brain was too busy cycling through Earth's classification files. Earth was a class. 12 Deathworld. And yet here was a Terran scientist kneeling in open air, poking alien stone formations with her bare hands as if she were on a nature hike. No panic, no urgency, no reverence for the danger around her. Was she mad? Or immune? Chen looked up at them, noticing their silence. Her eyes twinkled with a quiet amusement. "You all look like someone opened the airlock on your meditation chambers." Zixtel's throat was dry. He couldn't decide if it was the arid wind or the growing sense that their mission parameters had just changed. This human was something else. A low, guttural tremor rolled through the rocky plain so deep, so primal, that even the wind stilled for a moment. Dr. Zixtel froze mid-sentence, his vocal nodes locking in place. Dust vibrated off the rims of nearby rocks. A distant ridge, shaped like a crescent fang, shimmered with movement. Something was coming. Commander Vex 9 stepped forward like a shadow given purpose, visor flashing red as his HUD flooded with motion detection alerts. "Contact," he snapped. "Unclassified lifeform, large. Estimated mass, 1.5 tons, fast. Coordinates?" Zixtel whispered, voice thin with dread. Vex 9 raised his rifle. 200 meters closing. The alien researchers dropped into defensive positions, fingers trembling as they activated beacon flares and emergency shields. Yosef's claws rattled on his datapad as he attempted to ID the incoming signal. There's no known match in the central fauna registry. Energy output, it's spiking with bioelectric tension. This thing is aggressive, very. Hold position, Vex 9 barked. Weapons hot. Dr. Chen, who had just finished cataloging a thermal moss patch, tilted her head at the approaching thunder, her brows furrowed not with fear, but mild curiosity. Is that it? Zixtal turned to her, baffled. That thing? Maybe a top-tier apex predator. As if summoned by the very word, the beast crested the ridge. It was grotesquely majestic 6 legs, each ending in taloned feet that cracked rock with every step. Its hide was plated in thick, layered scales like forged metal, glowing faintly, with pulsing orange heat. Jaws wide, dripping with some steaming substance, eyes locked forward with a hunger that had never known fear. One of the geologists shrieked, "Fall back." Vex 9 ordered, stepping in front of the team and raising his weapon. Dr. Chen, behind cover now. But she didn't move. She didn't scream. She didn't flinch. She took a slow step forward, calm as sunrise. Dr. Chen. Zixtal shouted. She reached into her side pouch and pulled out something dull and rectangular. Ration bar. The creature slowed as it neared, nostrils flaring. Its head lowered slightly, confused by her lack of threat posture. A rumbling snarl issued from its throat like thunder trapped in a drum. Chun knelt in the sand, peeled the ration, and extended it slowly with an open hand. "You hungry, sweetheart?" she said gently, as if speaking to a pet left alone too long. Predator's shoulders rolled with tension. It crept forward, each step echoing like a war drum. Zixtal watched, stunned, as its snarls turned to low clicks, then impossibly to what sounded like purring. The beast snatched the bar with shocking delicacy, retreating only slightly to chew. Dr. Chen reached out in God's help him all scratched just behind one of its jagged head ridges. It leaned into her touch. "No," whispered Yule. Seth, horror and wonder mixing in his voice. "That is not a behaviorally stable creature. That neural signature is all dominance aggression. It's not supposed to submit." "It's scared," Chen said, standing as the beast finished its treat, "and probably hasn't seen humans before. Reminds me of the cougars back home, snarl a lot. But they're just trying to see if you'll run." The predator rumbled again, gave her a final huff of warm breath, and turned bounding off into the canyons with a grace that defied its bulk. Silence followed. The wind returned. No one moved. Zixtal's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. That thing could tear through a dropship bulkhead like paper. "And you just petted it?" Chen blinked. "Yeah? Why?" Commander Vex 9 finally lowered his rifle. "This planet is a Deathworld. That creature is listed as a Class 10 biohazard." "Maybe," Chen said with a shrug. "But it was also hungry. Maybe your Deathworld is just misunderstood." Zixtal stared after the beast, heart pounding, brain racing. For the first time in his career, the data didn't fit. For the first time, he wasn't sure the danger was the planet. It was the human. The jungle didn't breathe, it hissed. Each gust of wind carried particles sharp enough to score paint, and the trees swayed like predators waiting for prey to step too close. The air here wasn't just heavy. It was wet with acidity, thick, with spores and charged with trace amounts of static that prickled across sensitive scales and sensors alike. Dr. Zixtal triple-checked his bioshield status, then checked it again, talons twitching. "Warning," he muttered, reading aloud from his datapad, "flora exude vaporized neurotoxins at irregular intervals. Physical contact may cause necrotic breakdown of exposed tissue within minutes. The jungle edge loomed just meters away, where vine-choked branches curled like skeletal fingers across the blackened soil. Even the light filtering through the canopy had a sickly yellow-green hue, as if the sun itself feared to shine too brightly here. Commander Vex 9 stood in a defensive posture, scanning every inch of the tree line with twitching sensor arrays. "Recommend flame sterilization of path," he said without looking back. "Proceeding beyond this point is unnecessary risk." "We need samples," Zixtel replied, voice thin. "And proximity scans are unreliable due to interference." He didn't want to admit that he too wanted to burn the entire jungle to ash. From behind, the sound of bootsteps. Calm, unhurried. Dr. Chen appeared, chewing casually on some dried fruit from a ration pouch, her environmental mask tucked under her chin. "Any idea if those trees are fruit-bearing?" she asked, pointing toward a knotted tangle of vines coiling around a squat, wide trunk that looked like it had grown out of a nightmare. "No," Zixtel said, already alarmed. "Do not approach. Do not touch anything. That species exudes an acid capable of dissolving polysteel in minutes." She blinked. "You mean those?" She pointed to a cluster of dangling pods that looked like bloated lanterns. "Those are just blister bulbs. They grow all over Earth's southern marshlands. You don't want to step on them, but otherwise, harmless." And before anyone could stop her, she stepped forward and swept a vine aside with her bare hand. The alien team recoiled in collective horror. Yulseth let out a shrill, involuntary sound. Zixtel's eyes locked onto her skin, expecting smoke, corrosion, anything. Nothing happened. Chun crouched beside the nearest vine cluster and plucked one of the bulbs from its stalk, studying it thoughtfully. "Yup, same exact cellular lattice. They smell worse back home, though." Zixtel took an unconscious step forward, heart pounding in his second chest cavity. "Dr. Chun, please explain how you are not melting." She looked up, confused. "I have thicker skin than you guys, literally. Humans evolved on a planet with stinging insects, spore clouds, acidic rain, UV bombardment, and plants that try to kill you just for breathing too close. This," she gestured around, "this is a little overgrown, sure, but not worse than the Everglades in spring." Vex 9 checked his sensors again, as if hoping a malfunction would explain what they'd just witnessed. "The recorded acidity level of that vine is..." Chun plucked another and tossed it to him. "Don't squeeze it. Or do. I'm not your mom." He let it fall to the ground without touching it. She turned back toward the jungle, letting her fingers trail along a branch as she walked forward without fear, her body language more relaxed than any of the heavily armored and shielded alien team. Leaves brushed her arms. Spores sparkled briefly in the air. Not one blister appeared on her skin. Not one cough escaped her lips. "She is unkillable," Yulseth whispered. "No," Zixtel replied softly, his voice catching in his throat. "She's used to this." The forest thickened around them as they followed her. Each plant she touched was one their briefings had marked as hostile. Each warning they'd memorized was proven useless. Every step forward in this jungle was a step deeper into the mystery of humanity. Chun suddenly paused, crouching by a low thorn-covered shrub. "Hey, I know this one." She gently peeled a thick, oily leaf from the stalk. "Back home, we boil these to make burn cream." Zixtel's datapad beeped a warning. "Contact with the... This plant will cause systemic organ failure in under 3 minutes." She rubbed some of the leaf's gel onto a minor scratch on her forearm and smiled. Zixtel didn't know what terrified him more, that the plant didn't kill her, or that she wasn't surprised. It began as a subtle flicker on the edge of the horizon, a barely perceptible ripple in the upper atmosphere. But within minutes, the entire firmament above Zarian Prime exploded in a maelstrom of shifting color and electromagnetic rage. Veins of searing blue lightning forked through clouds that swirled with ionized metal dust. The wind screamed. Dr. Zixtel stumbled backward as his instrument panel lit up with cascading error codes. The radiation meters were spinning red. Power. Fluctuations were so intense they distorted the very edges of reality. Static built up in his sensory horns, and the fine hairs along his neck stood on end. Stormfront incoming. VEX9 shouted. His voice crackled through the coms as interference scrambled his output. Category unknown. This is not a normal atmospheric cycle. The alien researchers scrambled for the emergency shelter crates, fumbling to deploy shielding. Tents lined with triple-phase lead fiber. The magnetic pressure was high enough to begin distorting local gravity in brief, nauseating pulses. The air tasted like copper and fury. Get down. Zixtel yelled. We have less than 90 seconds. Before full ionic arc saturation. Yet one figure remained upright. Still. UNSHIELDED.UNBOTHERD. Dr. Hume Chen stood on the edge of the rocky ridge, her silhouette backlit by a wall of shimmering electrical currents that danced across the sky in serpentine ribbons. Where others saw death, she saw beauty. Her eyes were wide, face lifted in awe. Her only movement was the slow lift of her hand holding a camera. She snapped a photo. Zixtel stared at her in disbelief. You'll be vaporized. No, I won't, she said calmly. This is an aurora. He blinked as if she had just spoken a word in a dead tongue. Aurora? Chun lowered her camera and turned to him. Yeah, solar wind interacting with the magnetosphere. Harmless. Mostly. Harmless? VEX9's visor overloaded and reset. Our electronics are collapsing. You are standing inside a Class 5 electromagnetic burst. That storm can liquefy synaptic gel in exposed nervous systems. Chun rolled her neck and flexed her fingers. Feels like a strong field day in Alaska. Yosef's voice trembled as he spoke, tail wrapped tightly around his own leg. How can your biology tolerate this? This level of radiation will induce neural scarring within minutes. Chun's gaze drifted upward again, entranced by the light. Because we evolved with it. Earth's magnetic field is constantly bombarded by solar radiation. The sun throws tantrums, flares, pulses. We had to adapt. Our cells repair themselves fast. Real fast. It's just normal back home. Zixtel was frozen. The numbers on his pad didn't make sense anymore. The storm was still climbing in power. The reading said she should already be convulsing, her organs cooking, her DNA unraveling in real time. But there she stood, relaxed, even energized. How are you not afraid? He asked, his voice quieter now, almost reverent. Chun smiled faintly. Because I grew up in places where you had to walk home through hailstorms, where the sun could give you burns in under 20 minutes, where tornado sirens meant grab the dog, not panic. Earth trains you early. Respect nature, but don't let it own you. Another wave of lightning cascaded across the sky. The storms. Center passed directly overhead. Everything shook. One of the geologists vomited. VEX9 shields flickered, dangerously close to collapse. Chun took one more photo. Beauty, she whispered. You just have to know how to look. The storm began to fade. The sky cooled from brilliant blue and violet back into a burnt orange. Haze, static charge dissipated. Power returned to the equipment, piece by piece, like timid creatures testing the air after a predator leaves. Zixtel slumped to the ground, breathing hard. He looked up at her again, standing untouched amid the wreckage of what had almost been their death. He realized then that their classification system, their sense of danger, meant nothing to her, and maybe meant nothing at all. Because to her, this wasn't chaos. This wasn't Hell. This was Earth. By the time the team reached the base of the obsidian escarpment, the storm had passed, but its memory lingered in the ground like static buried in bone. The air hung heavy with scorched ozone and ionized dust. Even the native wildlife, normally hyper-aggressive and territorial, had gone silent, as if the planet itself was taking a breath. The path ahead led into a collapsed alien ruin, jutting from the side of the ridge like broken teeth. Twisted metal supports groaned under the weight of ancient stone. The team paused just outside the entrance, their biosuits still humming as they recalibrated for radiation compensation. Inside, everything was still. Dr. Zixtel scanned the walls of the structure with a cautious hand, his datapad casting a pale green glow across faded glyphs, precursor species. Long extinct, he murmured, awed despite himself. No record of their presence on a Class 9 Deathworld until now. Commander Vex 9's voice cut through the reverent silence. Area unsecured. Thermal irregularities detected. Recommend minimal exposure. Yulseth hunched over a fragment of glassy tech embedded in the floor. The architecture here predates recorded galactic history. There's no scorch damage. No sign of forced collapse. It's like they just left. Zixtel nodded, eyes wide behind his visor, or fled. Dr. Chen walked into the ruin like she was stepping into a garage back home. No fear, no hesitation. Her headlamp flicked on, scanning the shadows. Looks like a bunker, she said casually. We had things like this back home during the Cold War. Fallout shelters. Zixtel stared at her. You built shelters. Underground to survive radiation wars? Chen shrugged. We didn't just build them. We practiced drills. I had one at school. Yulseth's grip tightened on his scanner. You were trained to survive planetary bombardment as children? Kind of, Chen replied, peering into a cracked ventilation shaft. The drills were mostly psychological, but yeah. Earth's been a mess for a long time. Nature tries to kill us, so do we. We get through it. Something deep within the ruin shifted. A metallic groan echoed down the hall. Vex 9 raised his weapon instantly, HUD blinking with alert markers. Motion 40 meters. Rapid. Incoming. The team clustered into formation. Tension crackled in the air like a second storm was about to fall from the ceiling. A creature emerged. From the shadows gaunt, loping on malformed limbs, covered in mottled bone plating. It looked like evolution had tried to design a predator, but gave up halfway through and decided to let madness finish the job. Its eyes burned with a raw, feral light. It screamed. Vex 9 fired first, a pulse of plasma slamming into the thing's chest. It stumbled and righted itself, charging harder. The second shot vaporized its head. Its body crashed into the floor. With a wet, mechanical thud. Silence returned. Zixtel slowly approached the corpse, analyzing the remains. That wasn't in the planetary fauna logs. Yulseth's hand shook. It adapted. In generations too short to track. It was. Feeding on the radiation. Chen stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. Reminds me of the rats in Chernobyl. Mutated, but alive, resourceful, not unlike us. Zixtel's breath caught. That's not normal. To you, Chen said, kneeling by the body. But Earth taught us that survival isn't about strength. It's about refusal. You don't die because the world wants you to. You adapt. You fight. Or you bury your dead and build bigger walls. The alien team stared at her, not speaking. Not because they didn't understand her words, but because they were starting to understand too well. And it terrified them. Vex-9 turned to her. Visor dim. Dr. Chen. If this world isn't dangerous to your kind, what is? Chen didn't answer at first. Her gaze lingered on the hallway ahead, where more echoes whispered in the dark. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. Danger isn't about how sharp the teeth are. It's about what's willing to bite back. She walked into the dark, and the aliens followed not because they wanted to, but because she made them feel like the only safe place on this planet was near her. Not in the way a forest pulses with insects or a jungle sings with birdsong, but in the way a wounded creature thrashes in its final rage, bleeding heat, light, and fury. Dr. Zixtel stood at the edge of the canyon rim, staring down into what should have been a geologically dead crater. Instead, the heart of Zarian Prime burned like a mechanical volcano. Geothermal fissures opened and closed with molten precision, spewing arcs of plasma into the air. Cracked pipes, remnants of a long-forgotten alien installation, hissed jets of chemical vapor in violent bursts. The heat shimmered in visible waves. Static clung to everything, warping sensor data and clouding vision. No one goes down there, Commander Vex 9 said without turning his head. His tone was final. Mission protocol, too unstable. Zero survivability, Zixtel agreed. The environmental readings alone were suicidal. Radiation spikes, magnetic flux distortion, air composition shifting minute to minute between breathable, acidic, and combustive. The crater was death made manifest. Then came the crackle of Chun's voice across the comms. We're losing the data feed. Zixtel's eyes widened. The ground array, the deep-core seismograph probe that had taken 3 days to calibrate, was inside the basin. The signal was fading. All that work, all that data, gone. We need that probe extracted, Zixtel said. Though the words felt hollow even as he said them. No, Vex 9 replied instantly. No one is going in after it, not even me. A short silence followed. Then, I'll go. Zixtel turned just in time to see Dr. Hume Chen unfastening her jacket and slinging it over a boulder. She tightened the straps on her boots, adjusted the filter on her breathing mask, and began walking toward the canyon's edge. What are you doing? He demanded, stepping in front of her. You can't survive that. I can last 5 minutes, she said, voice calm. Maybe 7 if I pace my breathing. I've done worse. You've done worse than this? Yulseth blurted, his voice breaking into a near shriek. That crater is spitting radioactive gas. Chun met Zixtel's eyes with quiet steel. I used to hike into volcano calderas to tag geothermal vents. Earth has places that look like this on a good day. But why? Zixtel asked, desperation creeping in. Why would you risk your life for a machine? Chun's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, her tone sharpened. Because the machine holds knowledge, and knowledge saves lives. Before anyone could stop her, she dropped over the edge. She moved like a mountain goat, bounding from ledge to ledge, her breath even and focused, eyes never leaving her goal. The radiation meter on Zixtel's scanner screamed in protest. Her biosigns fluctuated. Her body was enduring temperatures that would have boiled the blood of half the known galaxy. Then her voice again, strained but steady. I've got the core transmitting burst packet now. Zixtel checked the feed. We're receiving data stream is stable. We've got it. Then came a roar. Not the wind, not the geysers. Something else. Something alive. A shadow slithered up the canyon wall. It wasn't fully visible, just the flicker of movement through heat distortion. But its presence was undeniable. A low-frequency tremor shook the ground. Whatever it was, it had been woken up. Dr. Chun, evacuate immediately. Vex 9 barked, now frantically powering up his arm-mounted launcher. Chun's voice cut through. Can't outrun it. I'll draw it left. Hit it on my mark. Hit it? You're not even armed. No, she said. I'm bait. Before anyone could argue, she ran. The thing lunged. A ripple of heat and movement, a shriek that split the comms feed into static. Zixtal's stomach turned inside out. She was a blur dodging steam bursts, sliding across rock, leading the predator across the geothermal field. Vex 9. Locked on. Fired. The world exploded in light and kinetic force. Silence. Then. I'm still. Here, came a voice, ragged, tired. Victorious. Dr. Chen emerged from the canyon 10 minutes later, covered in soot, limping, blood drying on her forehead. But alive, Zixtal rushed to meet her, catching her arm as she reached the top. You shouldn't have survived that, he whispered. Yeah, she said, coughing once and offering a tired grin. People keep telling me that. Why didn't you wait? He asked. We could have found another way, a safer plan. Chen looked back down at the basin, still rumbling, still angry. Because, she said quietly, Earth doesn't give you time to wait for someone stronger. So you learn to become the one people wait for. And for the first time, Zixtal realized she wasn't just surviving this world. She was beating I. The shuttle bay doors hissed open with hydraulic finality. Inside the orbiting research station, the air was cold, sterile, and after the raw violence of Zarian Prime, eerily quiet. Every footstep echoed like thunder on polished alloy floors. The alien team walked in silence, scorched suits hanging heavy with the residue of everything they had just endured. They didn't speak. They barely breathed. And in their center, walking with a split lip, burned jacket, and one arm cradled against her ribs, was Dr. Hume Chen. Unshaken, unyielding. The other scientists on the station, those who had stayed behind to monitor the surface, gathered along the bay windows, expecting panic, perhaps mourning, at the return of their ground team. What they saw instead was a woman limping calmly off a Deathworld, carrying a damaged data core and a half-melted ration pack in her bag like souvenirs. Dr. Zixtal didn't speak to anyone for hours. He just stood at his workstation, scrolling through the data they had recovered from the deep core probe, his claws occasionally twitching with nervous energy. The seismic maps, the environmental readings, the evolutionary anomalies, they were all valuable. Priceless, even, but it wasn't the data that haunted him. It was her ease among the monsters, her calm inside the storm, the casual way she'd risk her life, not for glory, not for orders, but because it needed to be done. He began dictating his final report, his voice dry, hollow, but gaining strength with each word. Designation: Zarian Prime. Retains Class 9 Deathworld status under Galactic. Environmental Classification Act. Survival rate remains at sub 12% for most known sapient species. Environmental threats include, but are not limited to, unstable atmosphere, radiation surges, hyper-evolved fauna, toxic flora, seismic instability, and variable gravitational shifts. No known safe zones. He paused. His eyes drifted to the far end of the lab where Chun sat on a med table. She was sipping soup, one foot bandaged, the other bouncing idly to some internal rhythm. She looked tired, but peaceful, like someone who had just returned from a long hike in familiar mountains. Zixtal continued. Exception noted, Terran Homo sapiens, Earth origin variant, subclass, Chun type. He stopped again, then sighed, closing his datapad. Later, at the debrief, someone finally asked what everyone had been thinking. Dr. Chun began, an Andrelian linguist, tentacles folding nervously. What, would you consider a true death world? She tilted her head slightly, as if she hadn't heard. Right, you know, the linguist pressed. A world that even your kind would find dangerous, unmanageable, beyond tolerance. Chun thought for a moment. Her eyes flicked to the viewport where Zarian Prime now hovered in the distance, glowing storms wrapping the horizon, volcanoes twitching with suppressed fury, and valleys that hissed like open wounds. Then she smiled. Australia, she said simply. In summer. Every alien in the room turned to look at one another. Slowly. Carefully. Where is this Australia? Commander Vex 9 asked, almost afraid to know. Chun leaned back in her chair, her grin spreading. Oh, it's a continent on Earth. Hotter than this place. Bugs the size of your hand. Snakes in your shoes. Jellyfish that stop your heart. And that's before you even get to the spiders. Zixtal's datapad slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. Silence fell. Vex 9 slowly turned to the holographic projection of Earth in the star chart above the command console and quietly whispered, "What are you people?" Chun stood up, stretched, and slung her bag over her shoulder. "We're human," she said. "Earth doesn't make us tough. It requires us to be." She walked out of the room without another word, leaving a trail of stunned silence behind. Her dot, and as the aliens stared after her, their understanding of danger, of survivability, of strength, of themselves crumbled and reformed into something strange and terrifying, not because they had misjudged the planet, but because they had underestimated the species that called it home.